My name is Eleanor Hayes, and last night my own son looked me in the eyes and told me, "Serve my wife or leave this house." Just like that. No tremor in his voice. No hesitation. My son, the baby I once rocked to sleep. The boy who used to run crying into my arms when his knees hit the pavement, now delivering an ultimatum, like I was an unwanted guest. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't throw his words back at him. I simply stood there, feeling the weight of that sentence settle into the walls around us like dust. And then I turned around and walked back to my room in silence. I should start from the beginning, I suppose, or at least from a point that makes sense. Frank, my husband, passed away 2 years ago, 64 years old. He keeled over in the garden, pruning the roses, like always, right near the walkway. He died, with the smell of soil on his hands. After that, the house felt too big, too quiet, too cold. So when Daniel, our only son, insisted I move in with him and his wife, I thought, why not? Maybe it would help. I'd have family around, noise, someone to come home to every night, a different kind of warmth. But life isn't a tidy little story. You don't just step into someone's home and fit like a puzzle piece. Their house is in a small Indiana suburb, maple trees lining the streets, neighbors who wave whether they know you or not. A gas station 2 blocks down a church, across from a diner that serves the same coffee they've served since 1979. Real American life, the kind that's simple and predictable until you're the one disrupting the routine. At first, things felt fine. Not warm, not inviting, but manageable. Amanda, my daughter-in-law, was polite enough, though her smiles never seemed to reach her eyes. She liked things a certain way. Her kitchen was her territory, and I learned quickly that putting a spoon in the wrong drawer was a mistake. I tried to stay out of the way. I offered to help when it felt right. I took on little tasks, vacuuming, folding laundry, washing dishes, not because anyone asked me to, but because I felt like I needed to earn my stay. Then little tasks became expectations. Expectations became responsibilities. Responsibilities became routine. And before I knew it, I wasn't staying with family anymore, not really. I was a fixture, a tool, a background piece that made their life easier. Daniel works long hours, accounting job. He leaves at 7, comes home after 6, and collapses on the couch with his phone in hand. Amanda works from home, some kind of consulting job I never fully understood. I kept myself busy, cleaning bathrooms, meal prepping, doing grocery runs, sorting mail, making sure the dog got walked. They thanked me the first time, maybe the second. After that, it just became invisible. Invisible, that's the word. When I first moved in, I thought maybe Amanda struggled with the idea of sharing her space. I understood that. 2 women in 1 kitchen, 2 sets of habits. I didn't want to replace her mother or compete with her authority. But slowly, I realized it wasn't about space. It was about control. I was useful, not loved, not appreciated, just useful. Last night's ultimatum didn't come out of nowhere. It built itself over time, like a stain you don't notice until it's too big to ignore. Amanda made a comment at dinner, something small, something snide. If Eleanor is going to live here, she needs to pull her weight. I was already doing that, but she meant something else. She wanted a servant. She wanted someone to pick up every slack she felt in her life, someone who wouldn't challenge her, someone who wouldn't need anything in return. Daniel didn't defend me. He just nodded. That hurt more than the words. So after dinner, Amanda left the kitchen and Daniel stayed behind. He leaned against the counter like he was bracing for impact, but his voice stayed steady. "Mom, I think we need clear rules. Either you help out more around here, like really help, or maybe it's best if you find somewhere else to go. Somewhere else to go. As if a woman nearing 70 could just pick up and restart without thought. As if he didn't know that moving out meant draining savings, navigating leases, being alone all over again. But I didn't break. I didn't let him see the crack. I didn't let him see how deeply it cut. I hear you, I told him. My voice sounded like someone else's. And that was when he said it, his ultimatum. Cold, sharp-edged, a knife handed over with expectation, not apology. I didn't respond. I simply turned and walked down the hallway, the floor creaking under my slippers. I passed their family photos, wedding pictures, vacation snapshots, Amanda's framed certificates. None included me. Not one. My room was small. Barely fit the twin bed and dresser they gave me. I sat on the mattress and stared at the window. The moonlight made everything feel clearer, sharper. I thought of Frank. What he would have said if he were here. Probably would have taken Daniel by the collar and shaken some sense into him. Frank never tolerated disrespect. He believed respect was earned, not demanded. And he earned it every day he lived. I lay awake most of the night, listening to the house breathe. The fridge humming, the dog pacing, leaves rustling against the siding outside. I thought about leaving. I thought about staying. I thought about the years I spent building a home only to feel unwelcome in one that wasn't even mine. But somewhere between midnight and dawn, something in me settled. Not anger, not bitterness. Something steadier, like a river finding its direction. This morning, Amanda greeted me in the kitchen with a bright smile. Good morning. Ready for another productive day. Productive. As if my value could be measured in chores completed. As if my presence was only justified by a checklist. I just smiled. Not the smile she expected. A smaller one. The kind that hides something she'll never see coming. Because I may be old, but I am not done. I may be quiet, but I am not defeated. My silence isn't surrender. It's planning. And Daniel and Amanda have no idea what a woman like me can do when she finally remembers her worth. I didn't sleep much the night after the ultimatum, but I woke up with a strange clarity, like someone had rung a bell deep inside my chest, and the echo was still vibrating. I stood at the bathroom mirror, brushing my thinning gray hair back, looking at myself as if I were meeting me again for the first time. I wasn't sure who this woman was anymore. Widow, mother, houseguest, maid, or something else entirely. Something I hadn't named yet. Amanda left a list on the counter that morning. A literal list. In pen, in her handwriting, underlined. To do for Eleanor. Bullet points. Change bed sheets. Deep clean bathroom. Bake banana bread for Sunday brunch. Vacuum upstairs. Sweep leaves off porch. I read it twice, to be sure. Then I folded the paper in half, creasing it slowly, and put it in my sweater pocket. I didn't throw it away. Some things are worth keeping as evidence. When Daniel came into the kitchen, he didn't look me in the eye. He poured his coffee, scrolled his phone. He said, "Morning, Mom," like every morning was the same. Like he hadn't changed everything the night before. I waited for him to look up. He didn't. It's funny, the little moments where your life splits in two. Before and after. That was my after, right there in that kitchen, with the yellow morning sun lighting up the crumbs on the counter, and the smell of burnt toast lingering in the air. I didn't speak. I just grabbed my purse and left. The streets in town were waking up. School buses, lawn sprinklers, a dog barking at a squirrel. It felt comforting, in a way, like the world went on whether I was breaking or not. I walked into the diner across from the church, the one with the cracked vinyl booths, and the same waitress who's worked there since Reagan was president. Her name's Linda. She's round in the face, kind in the eyes, and always smells faintly of powdered sugar and cigarettes. She sees more than she says. Women like that always do. Well, if it isn't Eleanor, she greeted me handing me a menu she knew I wouldn't use. Haven't seen you in a bit. I slid into a booth. Life's been busy. She looked at me for a moment, like she could see straight through the words. Busy ain't always good. She poured me coffee without asking, and I told her everything. Not all at once, in pieces, like peeling wallpaper from a wall, one strip, then another, and the more I talked, the less shame I felt. By the time I finished, I was stirring cold coffee, and Linda was standing with her hand on her hip, shaking her head. You're living like an unpaid servant, she said plainly. That ain't family, that's labor. Her bluntness hit me harder than Daniel's ultimatum. Maybe because she said it like a fact, not an accusation. She didn't pity me, she saw me. Before I left, she scribbled a number on a receipt. You call this woman, she said. She's a lawyer, helps seniors with housing and inheritance issues. She's good, and she doesn't let anyone get pushed around. Just like that, a door cracked open. I walked home slower, watching the leaves crunch under my shoes. Thoughts swirled, not angry ones, just clear. The kind you get when you finally stop trying to justify someone else's behavior and start asking what you deserve. When I got back, Amanda was in the living room, legs crossed, a laptop open. She didn't look up. Did you get the list done? I took the folded paper from my pocket and set it on the table beside her. I didn't unfold it. She glanced at it, eyes narrowing. Eleanor, we really need you to take initiative. I'm not doing any of it, I said quietly. Not loud, not dramatic, just true. She blinked. Excuse me. I'm not doing the list, I repeated. Or any future lists. If I help in this house, it'll be because I choose to, not because you assign it. Her jaw tightened. Daniel and I have expectations. I know, I said. You made them clear. Something flickered across her face. Anger, confusion, fear, maybe all three. Before she could respond, I turned and went to my room. Sat at the little desk by the window, opened the drawer, pulled out a folder I hadn't touched since Frank died. It held documents, our house deed, insurance savings account summaries, and a letter from Frank, written months before his heart gave out. I'd read it only once, unable to bear it again until now. In his messy handwriting, he'd written, If anything ever happens to me, don't let our son believe you need him more than he needs you. You have rights. You have a voice. Use it. I felt tears sting hot in my eyes as I read it. Not because it hurt, but because it reminded me of who I used to be. I had forgotten. Life has a way of sanding you down until you don't recognize your own shape. I dialed the number Linda gave me. A woman answered. Steady voice, sharp, precise diction. The kind of voice that could slice through excuses. Law Office of Margaret Tillman, she said. How can I help you? I straightened in my chair. My heart pounded, but not with fear, with something close to hope. My name is Eleanor Hayes, I said. I think I need some advice. For the first time in a long while, the words felt like a beginning, not an apology. That afternoon, I made an appointment. Nothing dramatic. No one knew but me. I cooked dinner like usual, set the table. Amanda complimented the seasoning. Daniel asked about my day without listening to the answer. But inside me, something shifted, like the foundation of a house settling into place after years of imbalance. Invisible maybe, but solid. And that night, as I lay in bed, I knew my silence wasn't the absence of action. It was the preparation. I woke up Monday morning with a plan, nothing fully formed, just the skeleton of one. The lawyer, Margaret Tillman, had scheduled me for Thursday. That gave me 4 days. 4 days to behave exactly the way Amanda and Daniel expected. 4 days to let them believe I had accepted my place. 4 days to collect every detail I needed. So I played along. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast sausage. The smell filled the house like it always did, and Daniel came in, rubbing sleep from his eyes, yawning like a child, who still thought breakfast appeared by magic. Amanda followed hair in a silk wrap, wearing expensive slippers that scuffed across the hardwood. She sat, reached for her plate, and said, "This is nice, Eleanor. Thank you." I smiled, of course. Not because she deserved it, because I needed her to believe the storm had passed. The first day was about observation. I watched how they moved through the house, what bills came in the mail, which repairs Daniel kept putting off. The upstairs bathroom faucet leaked. The back porch had wood rot. Amanda's car registration was overdue. Daniel kept mentioning work stress, hinting layoffs were rumored. The pillars of their confidence had cracks in them. That night, I helped fold laundry quietly while they watched television, a reality show about people buying beach houses in Florida. Every time someone on screen said budget, I felt Daniel flinch. I pretended not to notice. My silence made space for truths to show themselves. Tuesday, I leaned into the role even harder. I dusted bookshelves, polished the coffee table, even ironed Amanda's blouses. And each time she said, "Thank you, Eleanor," I responded with something neutral, thoughtful. "You're welcome. I'm glad I can help." Words that meant nothing by themselves, but carried weight when delivered with intention. Because I wasn't helping. I was studying. I was mapping the terrain of my own captivity. A woman can't escape if she doesn't know the shape of her cage. That afternoon, I took a walk to the church thrift shop, bought a used planner and a fountain pen with fading gold trim. I sat on a bench outside the autumn wind, tugging at my sweater, and wrote, Monday, gather information. Tuesday, win trust. Wednesday, prepare departure. Thursday, lawyer. Seeing it in ink made it real. A woman around my age sat beside me at the bus stop. Her name was Shirley. I recognized her from bingo nights Frank and I used to attend. She looked at me, then down at my planner. "You organizing a coup?" she joked. I smiled. Something like that. She studied me a moment longer. "Whatever it is you're planning, I hope it's something that gives you back some peace. You deserve peace, Eleanor." Funny how a stranger can say what your own family won't. Wednesday was the hardest, because on Wednesday, Amanda changed. Maybe she sensed something. Maybe she noticed a shift. She hovered, offering unsolicited advice. "You don't have to do everything you know," she said, while I wiped down counters. "We appreciate it, but you shouldn't wear yourself out." I wondered if she heard herself, if she remembered the ultimatum, if she recognized the contradiction. But abusers don't always sound like villains. Sometimes they sound like reasonable people. Sometimes they sound like mothers, or wives, or sons. That night, Daniel found me in the living room. He leaned on the doorway, hands in his pockets. "Mom," he started sighing, as if the weight of responsibility were crushing him. "Amanda and I, we just want harmony. We want you to feel comfortable here." "I see," I said. "I know last week felt harsh, but we just need structure. Expectations, boundaries. Boundaries. That word tasted bitter on my tongue. Boundaries aren't dictated. They're negotiated. I understand, I replied, and I'm glad we're talking about it. He seemed relieved. He smiled like a boy again. Then he said, "The one thing I'll never forget. You being here means a lot to us. You help this house run. Not you are loved. Not we want you. You help this house run. A function, a cog, a tool." I excused myself and went to my room before he could see my face crack. That night, I packed one suitcase, just one. A few clothes, my planner Frank's letter, my wedding ring, a photograph of us in front of our first house. I left behind the rest. You don't bring chains with you when you escape. Thursday morning, I took the bus to St. Mary's Square, 3 stops from the diner. The law office was on the second floor of a building that used to be a hardware store. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. A receptionist led me to a room with 2 chairs and a desk covered in papers. Margaret Tillman entered with a quiet confidence. No theatrics, no pity. Short-cropped hair, brown slacks, a navy blazer. Practical shoes. "You're Eleanor," she asked. "Yes," I replied. She nodded. "Let's begin." For the next hour, I told her everything. The ultimatum, the chores, the expectation that I serve. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she adjusted her glasses and said, "You have more power than you realize." I blinked. "Do I?" "You're not a tenant, but you have rights as a resident. You're not obligated to perform unpaid labor. And if you inherited assets from your husband, there are ways to leverage them to secure your future." The world tilted, like someone finally turned the lights on. She listed options: assisted living referrals, mediation, temporary housing, senior advocacy, and then a trust, Frank's trust. My breath caught. "If you are the beneficiary," she continued, "we can reclaim some agency here. I don't know the full structure yet, but I suspect your son doesn't understand the legal reality of your financial standing." I thought of Daniel, with his shoulders slumped under the weight of bills and expectations. "He doesn't," I admitted. Margaret nodded. "Then let's make sure you do." By the time I left, I had a folder of documents, a list of tasks, and something I hadn't felt in years: control. Outside leaves rustled along the sidewalk. The wind carried the scent of cinnamon from a bakery down the street. Life was happening, with or without permission. That afternoon, I returned home. I hung my coat. I sat at the kitchen table, and when Amanda walked in, startled to see me so still, she asked, "Are you okay?" I looked her in the eyes. "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm thinking." She frowned. "About what?" I smiled, not the timid smile of someone grateful to be allowed space, but the smile of someone reclaiming it. My future. Her confusion was almost comical, because she didn't know that in 4 days I had turned their ultimatum into my origin story. Before bed, I wrote one more line in my planner. Friday begin. I woke up Friday before the sun. The house was dark, the kind of quiet that feels like the world is holding its breath. I sat on the edge of my bed, my suitcase beside me, like a promise. I didn't know exactly how the day would go, but I knew it had to begin now. Not tomorrow, not after one more week of thinking. Now. I brewed coffee in the kitchen, the soft click of the machine, the only sound in the room. I poured myself a cup and sat at the table, with Margaret Tillman's paperwork spread in front of me like a blueprint. Bills, trusts, rights options. My freedom on paper. Daniel wandered out around 6, 30 hair mess tie draped loosely around his neck. He stopped mid-step when he saw the papers. He blinked. "Mom, what's all this?" I folded one document slowly. I had an appointment yesterday. Appointment for what he asked, voice tight. "Legal advice," I replied. The color drained from his face, like someone had pulled a plug. He sat down. "Legal advice. Why? What's going on?" I took a long sip of coffee. "I'm leaving Daniel. I'll be moving out next week, maybe sooner." He swallowed hard. "Because of what I said." "Because of what you meant," I corrected gently. He rubbed his forehead. "Mom, come on." We were frustrated. Amanda and I we needed boundaries. "You don't have to take it so personally." "Oh, I took it exactly as personally as I was supposed to," I said. "You told me to serve your wife, or leave. I'm choosing leave." He slumped back like I'd hit him. "I didn't want you to actually go." "Then you shouldn't have made it a condition," I answered. "Love doesn't belong on a contract. Expectations do, and I'm not a contract." He didn't say anything after that. Silence stretched between us. Not angry, not hostile, just honest. The kind of silence that finally tells the truth. I went to my room and zipped up my suitcase. Every sound felt louder than usual. The teeth of the zipper, the wheels bumping over hardwood, the rustle of fabric as I pulled on my coat. I left the door open behind me. Amanda must have heard. She appeared at the end of the hallway, arms crossed tightly, like she was hugging herself more than guarding the doorway. "You're actually leaving." "Yes," I said. She opened her mouth like she had something rehearsed to say. Maybe an apology, maybe another justification, but nothing came out. She just stood there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. I walked past her. She didn't follow. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a speech. I didn't look back. But I did leave something behind. On the kitchen counter sat a sealed envelope addressed to them both. Inside was a handwritten list, not of chores, just statements. 1. This house is not my burden. 2. My love is not conditional. 3. I will not trade dignity for shelter. 4. I raised a son. I am not raising a household. 5. I hope you learn the difference between help and servitude. I left the envelope there and stepped out into the crisp Indiana morning. The sun was barely rising, casting the kind of light that makes even familiar streets look like a beginning. My suitcase wheels scraped along the sidewalk as I headed toward the bus stop. I heard the front door open behind me, but didn't turn around. Footsteps, then stillness. Mom, Daniel called out. I paused, but didn't face him. Yes. You'll come back, right? His voice cracked. You'll visit. I closed my eyes. The wind carried the smell of wet leaves and morning dew. That depends, I said softly. It depends on who I'm visiting. There was a long silence. Then the sound of the door closing. On the bus ride across town, I pressed my hand to the window and watched the houses blur by mailboxes, garages, porch swings. American life, ordinary and unremarkable, and suddenly so full of possibility. Margaret had helped me secure a temporary apartment. Small second floor above a local bakery that smelled of warm bread in the mornings. The rent was manageable, and with the trust Frank left, I'd be fine, better than fine, actually, independent. The landlord, Mr. Grady, helped carry my suitcase upstairs. He was a veteran with weathered hands and a kind voice. Start fresh, he said, resting the bag just inside the door. Nothing wrong with starting fresh. When he left, I stood there in the empty space. Bare walls, old hardwood floors, sunlight falling across the room like a blanket, and I let myself feel it. All of it. Relief, sadness, anger, hope, like the four corners of a compass pointing me back to myself. I unpacked slowly, folded clothes into drawers, put Frank's letter on the nightstand, set my wedding ring in a dish by the sink. I felt like I was building a nest from twigs and scraps, but it was mine. That evening, Linda from the diner came by with groceries, bread, eggs, a plant for the windowsill. "Welcome home," she said, like she had been waiting years to say it. We sat at the small kitchen table, drinking tea from mismatched mugs. I told her everything, and this time, the telling felt like breathing, not bleeding. "You didn't leave because you were unwanted," she said. "You left because you're finally choosing yourself." I nodded. "I just hope Daniel understands someday." She held my hand gently. Understanding isn't owed. Peace is. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The same face looked back at me, but it wasn't the same woman. I brushed my hair, tied it back, and said out loud to no one and everyone, "I am not done." The next morning, I went back to the lawyer and signed the necessary documents. Protective measures, ownership clarifications, financial safeguards Frank had left behind like breadcrumbs guiding me out of the forest. I learned I didn't need permission to exist. When I got home, I sat at my new kitchen table and opened a fresh page in my planner. Frank was right. Then underneath, in smaller letters, "I am allowed to start over." For the first time in years, the silence felt like mine. I woke up Saturday to the smell of bread rising through the floorboards, the bakery downstairs, already in full swing. It was the first scent of my new life, and it hit me like a hymn, warm, yeasty, comforting, honest. I lay there a moment, the quiet pressing around me like a blanket. No footsteps in the hallway, no lists on the counter, no voices calling my name like an order. Just me. I made coffee in the tiny kitchen. The machine sputtered like it needed encouragement, but it got the job done. I sat at the table with my planner, opened the morning light, catching in the curve of my mug, and I made my first real list. Not chores, not duties, just possibilities. Try the community center, visit the library, call Shirley, call Margaret about next steps. I paused before writing the last one. Don't look back. I underlined it. The first few days in the new apartment moved slowly. Like my bones were adjusting to an unfamiliar rhythm, something lighter. I went to the community center and joined a book club, mostly other widows, a few retirees, with loud opinions and louder laughs. I volunteered at the church food pantry. I even applied for a part-time job at the floral shop between the diner and the thrift store. The owner, a soft-spoken man named Victor, hired me on the spot. "You have steady hands," he said. "Good for ribbons and arrangements." Maybe he saw something steadier in me than I saw in myself. By Wednesday, I had a routine wake, coffee flowers lunch at the diner volunteer hours home. A routine stitched from threads of choice instead of obligation. But peace isn't the absence of the past. My phone rang on Thursday afternoon. Daniel. I stared at the screen until it stopped. When it rang again the next morning, I silenced it. By the third call, Saturday, I answered. "Mom?" His voice was thin, like something inside him was fraying. "I shouldn't be calling," he went on. "I know you need space. I know I messed up. But things have been hard." I said nothing, letting silence work the way it had been working for me. Not a weapon, not a shield, a boundary. Finally, he exhaled. "The water heater broke. The porch needs repairs. Amanda's contract ended, and she's trying to find work. I didn't realize how much you did, how much you held together. His voice trembled. My heart pulled in two directions toward him, and away like a tide caught in two moons. "I'm sorry," he said. The words rushed out like a confession. "I'm sorry I treated you like staff. Like you were supposed to fix everything. I don't know why I did that." I closed my eyes. Grief is strange. It comes even when no one has died. "I appreciate the apology," I said softly, "but I can't come back." "I'm not asking you to," he said quickly. I guess I hoped you'd still be in our lives, in some way." I let the words sit. They didn't twist like a knife. They didn't bruise. They just were. "I'm not gone," I said, "but I'm not who I was. If I'm part of your lives, it'll be on different terms. My terms." He swallowed. "Okay, I understand." He didn't nod fully, but he wanted to. And sometimes want is the first miracle. Later that night, I took out the trust papers Margaret had given me. I read through every line, tracing Frank's name, where his signature lived like a ghost. The trust meant financial security, protection, independence. It meant that even if life had tried to shrink me, Frank had left me the means to expand again. He had known I'd need it. The next morning, I gathered the courage to do something I hadn't done in months: visit Frank's grave. I brought carnations from the shop, the stems wrapped in twine. I knelt by the stone, brushed away fallen leaves, and spoke like he was sitting on the bench beside me. "You were right," I whispered. "I forgot who I was, but I'm remembering now, piece by piece." The wind rustled the trees like the world was agreeing. As I headed back to the apartment, I passed a yard sale. Tables of old dishes, porcelain figurines, and mismatched linens. A little girl was trying to buy a dollhouse with a handful of quarters. The seller shook her head. "That isn't enough, sweetheart." Without thinking, I stepped forward and handed the seller a $5 bill. "Keep the change," I said. The girl beamed at me, eyes bright, and for a moment, I saw Daniel at that age, grass-stained knees, a missing front tooth, joy uncontained. It hurt and healed in the same breath. That afternoon, as I arranged hydrangeas at the flower shop, Amanda sent a text. "I'm sorry. I'm learning. I hope someday you'll want to have dinner with us. No expectations. Just family." I reread it twice. A week ago, those words would have felt impossible. Now they felt like a path not back to where I was, but forward to somewhere new. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I finished the arrangement in front of me, blue petals cupped like Hans' green leaves, spreading like wings. Victor watched me from the counter. "You've got talent," he said. "Some folks think flowers are just decor. They're not. They're stories. You gotta let the bloom open on its own time." I nodded, tying the ribbon into a bow. So many years, I had bloomed for everyone but myself. Now finally, I was learning the shape of my own petals. That evening, I made soup in my little apartment chicken and wild rice, simple and fragrant. I set the table for one. It didn't feel lonely. It felt mine. Halfway through the meal, I heard movement downstairs. Someone knocking at the back entrance of the bakery. Curious, I went down. It was Daniel holding a box. "I'm not here to take you back," he said. "I just found some things of yours. I thought you might want them." I opened the box. My sewing kit. The quilt my mother made. A stack of letters I'd written to Frank while he was in the hospital years ago. Things I thought were lost. "I should have asked before taking them to the attic," he confessed. I thought if they weren't in front of you, you'd move on. But that wasn't my call." He handed the box to me. Thank you, I said. He nodded. Can I hug you? I hesitated, then stepped forward. His arms wrapped around me, not like a son trying to possess, but like a man trying to understand. The kind of hug that said, I'm learning. The kind that didn't ask anything in return. When we pulled apart, I could see the exhaustion in his face, the effort, the trying. Take care of yourself, I said. You too, he replied. And then he left. No promises, no contracts, just a door closing gently. Back upstairs, I set the box beside the table and wrote in my planner, I am rebuilding. The next day at church, the pastor spoke about forgiveness, not as something you give because someone deserves it, but because you deserve peace, not reconciliation, not blind acceptance, just peace. I sat in the pew, let the words settle, and realized they didn't hurt anymore. They fit. That night, I texted Amanda back. Dinner someday might be nice. We'll see. One step at a time. No exclamation points. No apology. Just a beginning. Because revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like getting your life back. I didn't expect anything dramatic when I agreed to meet Daniel and Amanda again. No breakdowns or grand gestures. No perfect apologies wrapped in bows. People don't change in a week. They just realize they need to. And sometimes that's enough to open a door. We chose neutral ground, the diner across from the church. Linda gave me a knowing nod when I walked in, setting a pot of coffee at my table without a word. When Daniel and Amanda arrived, they hovered by the booth, like they weren't sure if they were welcome to sit. I gestured to the seats. They looked like they hadn't slept much. Amanda, especially, her makeup thinner shoulders, hunched, like she'd been fighting a battle I couldn't see. Daniel rubbed his hands together, his wedding ring spinning around his finger. Thank you for meeting us, he said. I nodded. You asked. I had time. Silence bloomed between us like something heavy and alive. The clink of dishes, the sizzle from the kitchen, Linda humming off-key, it all filled the gap. Finally, Amanda spoke. We want to understand, really understand, what we did. I studied her face, not to measure sincerity, just to see if she was here as a fighter or a listener. Today, she looked like someone choosing to listen. You treated me like I was there to serve you, I said, not unkindly, like my presence was conditional, like my value depended on what I could do for you. Daniel winced. I know. I thought... He trailed off, sighing. I thought that was just... What happens? You get older, you help. That's what most of the guys at work talk about. Their moms helping with the kids, cleaning, cooking. It sounded normal. It is normal to help, I replied. It's not normal to demand it. Amanda nodded fingers, gripping her coffee mug. We didn't see the difference. That's on us. I reached into my purse and took out the folder Margaret had helped me assemble. Not to threaten, not to scare, to inform, to level the ground beneath us. I needed you to know something, I said. Not as leverage, as truth. I slid a few documents across the table, trust papers, inheritance clauses, financial breakdowns. Their eyes darted across the pages. I watched Daniel's face, pale, Amanda's brow furrowed. This says, you're the trustee, Daniel murmured, that you control everything Dad left. Yes, I said. Your father protected me. Not because he didn't trust you, but because he wanted to make sure I was never cornered. Not by life, not by circumstances, not by anyone. Amanda swallowed. We thought you needed us more than we needed you. You were wrong. My voice wasn't cruel, just clear. Daniel leaned back, staring at the table, as if it might swallow him whole. Mom, we were so careless. We were selfish, Amanda corrected. I know, I said, and I'm not here to punish you. I already punished myself for long enough by staying silent, but I need you to understand that my life isn't on loan. It isn't collateral. I don't owe you labor for love. Amanda nodded slowly, tears brimming, but not falling. What do you want from us now? Respect, I said. Nothing more, nothing less. Daniel let out a shaky breath. We can do that. We want to do that. We talked for a long time about boundaries and expectations, and how help is a gift, not a currency, how dignity isn't something you negotiate, how assumptions rot relationships from the inside out. When the check came, Daniel reached for it. I've got this. No, I said gently. Let me. He froze. Why? Because I'm not fragile, I replied. And because I want to. The look he gave me, somewhere between grief and relief, felt like the first real connection we'd made in years. As we stepped outside, Amanda hugged herself against the wind. I hope one day you'll visit, she said. One day, I agreed. Not today, but one day. They walked to their car. I watched them go, not with anger, but with something like hope. Faint, cautious hope. When they were gone, Linda appeared beside me, wiping her hands on her apron. Well, she said that looked like a turning point. Maybe, I said. Or a fork in the road, she added. Either way, you were driving. I smiled. Thank you, Linda, for everything. Don't thank me, she scoffed. You're the one who stood up. That afternoon, I went to see Margaret at her office. Her shelves smelled like dust and pine cleaner. She gestured for me to sit. So she said, steepling her fingers, How'd it go? I didn't drown, I replied. She smirked. That's a start. We reviewed next steps, not to sever ties, but to secure them. I wanted clarity, not war. She prepared documents for me to maintain control of Frank's trust, reaffirm my address, and establish medical and financial directives. Things people my age don't like to think about until they're forced to. You're not obligated to be anyone's caretaker, she said as I signed. But you can choose to be. Choice is everything. On my way out, I paused at the doorway. Margaret. Yes? You helped me remember something. What's that? That I didn't come this far just to shrink again. She nodded. Then don't. Outside, the sky was gray, with the threat of rain. I pulled my coat tighter and headed toward the bus stop. A young man offered me his seat. I almost refused, then decided to accept, not because I needed it, but because there's strength in receiving with grace. Back at the apartment, I made tea and sat by the window. The world moved outside. Cars, passing people, laughing a dog, barking at nothing. Ordinary life, extraordinary in its own way. I opened my planner. Reveal completed. Next heal. I didn't know what healing would look like. Maybe dinners once a month. Maybe a phone call on holidays. Maybe nothing at all. Healing isn't always reunion. Sometimes it's just release. I closed the planner and whispered to myself, I am not the woman they tried to contain. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a declaration. It felt like the truth. The first snowfall arrived earlier than expected that year, just a light dusting across the window pane, like powdered sugar sifted over the world. I sat at my small kitchen table, watching the flakes drift down past the streetlight. It felt like a curtain call, or maybe the opening scene of something new. I wasn't expecting company. I had soup simmering on the stove and a quilt on my lap, and I was planning to spend the evening reading. Then the phone rang. Not Daniel's number this time, Amanda's. I let it ring twice before answering. Eleanor, she said, voice small but steady. I'm sorry to bother you. I wanted to tell you something. Daniel's been trying to fix things around the house. The water heater, the porch. He keeps trying to do it all himself, and I think it's because he feels like he has to prove something. To you, to himself. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear the shape of her words. I was wrong, she continued. About a lot. About what it means to have someone like you in our lives. I thought authority came from control, but now I think it comes from responsibility, from care, and I cared about having things done my way more than I cared about you as a person. Silence, but it wasn't the kind that bruises. I'm not calling to ask you to come back, Amanda said. I'm just calling to say I'm learning, and thank you for teaching me, even if you didn't mean to. I closed my eyes, letting the words settle in the room around me. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It matters more than you know. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, with the phone in my hand, feeling something unfurl in my chest, like a ribbon stored too long, finally uncoiling. A week later, I received an invitation in the mail. Daniel and Amanda were hosting a small dinner to celebrate repairs finally being completed on the house. No chores, no expectations, no pressure, the note read. Just family if you want. I stared at the invitation for days. I propped it against the sugar jar. I moved it to the nightstand. I tucked it in my planner, then took it out again. It wasn't fear holding me back. It was the weight of possibility. The knowledge that stepping through that door would mean stepping into a future I couldn't predict. In the end, I said yes. I took the bus over, wearing the cashmere scarf Frank had given me on our 25th anniversary. The house looked the same from the outside, but something felt different. The little details, a wreath made of real pine instead of plastic, a welcome mat washed clean, lights glowing through the windows like a heartbeat. Daniel opened the door. He looked older, not in years, but in spirit, in awareness. Hi, Mom, he said. I nodded. Hi, Daniel. He stepped aside, not with expectation, but invitation. Inside the table was set with mismatched plates, the ones I used to complain about because they chipped easily. There were candles, a roast in the oven. The dog wagged his tail at my feet, like I'd just come home from the store, not rebuilt my life from the ground up. Amanda emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She didn't force a smile. She didn't rush forward. She just looked at me with open eyes. Thank you for coming, she said. I'm glad to be here, I replied. On my terms. She nodded. On your terms. Dinner was awkward in places, comfortable in others, like trying on shoes you haven't worn in years, and realizing they still fit, but your gait has changed. Daniel asked about my job at the flower shop. Amanda asked how I liked the apartment. I answered honestly. They listened. At the end of the night, Amanda cleared her throat. We wanted to give you something, she said, handing me a small box wrapped in brown paper. Not repayment, not a bribe, just something to acknowledge who you are. Inside was a keychain, a tiny silver house, not their house, just a house. On the back engraved, your home is yours, your life is yours. My breath shook. Thank you, I whispered. Daniel's voice was soft. We know you're not coming back, and that's okay, but we'd like visits, not help, not tasks, just you. Tears prickled, but I didn't let them fall. I wanted to remember this moment clearly. I can visit, I said. Sometimes, on Sundays maybe. But understand something, I won't lose myself again. Daniel nodded. We won't let you. The wind rattled against the windows. Somewhere in the distance, I heard bells from the church tower, each note carrying through the cold, like a reminder that time moves, whether or not we follow. I left after dessert. They walked me to the porch. The porch boards no longer sagged. The repairs held. When I turned to leave, Amanda stopped me with a single sentence. I hope someday we earn your forgiveness. I didn't promise anything. Forgiveness is not a gift you hand over like a wrapped box. It's a garden. It needs tending. And some seasons, things don't bloom. But I did say this. Maybe someday. I'm open to someday. Back home, I stood at my window, watching snow gather on the street below. For the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel like something I needed to fill. It felt like something I had chosen. I sat at my kitchen table, opened my planner to a fresh page, and wrote, I chose myself, and the world didn't end. It just changed shape around me. I set down my pen, then speaking softly, almost a prayer, almost a reminder, I said, I hope you choose yourselves too. Because revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about restoration. Sometimes the loudest justice is the life you build after the breaking. I want you to remember this if you're listening. You are not furniture. You are not labor. You are not what people demand from you. You are more, and you deserve a life that reflects that. If my story meant something to you, share it. If my voice helped you find your own whisper to someone else, and if you found yourself in these words, even in the quiet corners, I hope you know. You are allowed to start over. Thank you for listening. I'll be here rebuilding, and I hope you will be too.